Before I show you how we put a gauge in a customized pane, there's just one or two basics which I need to cover with you. To use a gauge in a customized pane, we use it by inserting a .NET user control pane and then telling the .NET user control to use our gauge control. So we will need to know the assembly name, the namespace, and the namespace methods. You can see them there, so it's relatively straightforward. We just simply pick up the gauge radial.dll and then we will choose the right assembly names and methods. Now, whereas in App Designer knew all this information, was able to send the initialization, the setup of the screen, the control automatically for you. So you're only really having to concentrate on sending it a value. For customized panes and a .NET user control, fundamentally, they know nothing about the gauge radial or the gauge arc that we've got. So when we send XML to the control, we need to be sending not only the data, the pointer value we want, but also the range colors and all the other bits and pieces which we will see. So now that we've got those basics over, what I'm going to do now is we'll nip over to Syspro, we'll load a customer inquiry, and we'll start adding our pane. Here we are in customer inquiry. So the first thing we need to do is add a custom pane. So let's do that. Custom pane new. So we'll give it a title. And now we need to tell it what object type to put into the custom pane. So we're going to choose a .NET user control. And once we've got the .NET user control, it's now asking us for assembly name, namespace, and methods. So we will browse for the gauge radial DLL, which is here. Now it comes up with default namespace and methods. We need to change those defaults to the gauge radial. And as we do that, the namespace method of update gauge comes. So that's the method that we actually need. So now that the custom pane knows that it's a .NET user control and what control it's got to host, we can save that. Now it's actually asking if we want to edit any VB script. We don't at this stage, so I'm going to say no to that. And we can see now that it's popped the pane in and it's initialized the gauge in its default layout, things like that. So the next thing we need to do is work out how do we get information from the program into the gauge. So the way we do that is to choose a pane, and I'm going to choose the contact details, and we're going to use the onRefresh event to do some arithmetic and update this control. So first things that I'm going to do now is go down to the macro for the standard pane. Now I've been cheating here whilst we've been away, and I've put the code in already, so we're not have to waste any time. But fundamentally, on the refresh event, so when the contact details pane refreshes, it'll execute this VB script. And it's exactly the same code that we saw earlier on in the App Designer. A few variables, we pick up the values from the other panes in the customer inquiry, do a bit of arithmetic, bit of a debug there. The difference, as I said earlier on, is that we've now got to build the full XML string to make any changes to the control that we need, which would include changes to the ranges if we actually wanted them to be changed. But any change from that default view that you saw, we build into an XML string. And then what we've got to do is we've got to send that XML string to the relevant custom pane. So we will do that. So we come down to custom panes here. That's the credit limit. That's the one we just created. So we'll click that. These are, so we don't have to change any of this stuff other than we do actually want to execute a method, and we'll just insert the VB script code. So it's actually done it for us. Now, normally you might pass the XML string on one of these parameters, but because we've got such a long string, we actually pass it on these variables. So there's our variable there. So we will just pop it in here and pass it in as parameter 1. that's actually all we want to do. So just to recap, when the contact details refresh, it'll pick up some values from other panes on the screen, do some arithmetic, build the XML string, and then chuck it out the .NET user control that we've got. So that's looking good. So let's go now and see how that's going to work. So I've loaded customer inquiry again, and as you can see, I've added an art gauge so that we can see it in action. So all we're left to do now is key in a customer number. And you can see that as soon as these panes refreshed, the data was extracted from the other panes and sent to our controls. And it's as simple as that. There's just one other sort of hint that you might like to have a look at. So I'm just going to have a look at the properties of our credit limit control. And if you remember right at the beginning, it had asked me if I wanted to see any or edit any of the VB script, and I said no. But what I've found, because we actually don't need any, what I've actually found useful is to leave a little comment line like this one here to indicate to anybody following on from me where the code is being created, or the XML string is being created that's being sent to the control. And in this case, as you can see, I'm saying look at the contact details VB script. Just a little bit of a gotcha there. So we'll nip over now and just finish off the course, and I'll be back in 2 ticks. So I just wanted to recap on what we've seen and just finalize our little course. So we talked about the .NET user control, and you've seen the assembly names and namespaces in action, which is good. This is what we actually created in our little demo, and just a reminder on the XML and being created there. Just one note, well, you might have thought, well, why didn't you create the code for populating both .NET user controls from the customer information? The customized pane don't work like that. So in fact, what you'll find is I've got code for populating the radial gauge on the customer detail and the art gauge on the customer information one. It's exactly the same technique. It's not to worry. Okay, and then finally, if you're in a situation where the gauges don't seem to be doing what you thought they were doing, there is a way in looking at what XML is being received by the gauges and what they're doing with it. And this is by using something called Debug View, which is a Microsoft program for monitoring debug statements. And both of the gauges output a trail of the XML that they receive and what they do with that XML. And you may find it useful if you are experimenting and all of a sudden it's not doing what you thought it would do. And that's it. I hope it's only a bit of a short course, but I hope it's been of interest. Thanks very much. Bye.